Those apologies be received, seconded by Councillor Fletcher. Put that motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declare that carried. Thank you. Declaration of interest. Any declarations of interest? No. Item 3 is confirmation of minutes. I move that the
Happy to second.
The minutes of the Regional Strategy and Policy Committee be confirmed from the ordinary meeting held on Thursday the 3rd of December 2015, including the confidential section, as a true and correct record, seconded by Councillor Walker. I'll put that motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declare that carried. Petitions. There are no petitions. We now go to item 5, public input, and we have one item of public input. It's Mr. Paul Beverley, Independent Chair of Sea Change, who's going to be here this morning talking about on the Hauraki Gulf Marine Spatial Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to introduce Paul Beverley, who's actually the chair of the Stakeholder Working Group. As councillors will know, this is a marine spatial plan that was set up through the Waikato Regional Council, Hauraki District Council, Thames Coromandel Council and Auckland Council. I'm the co-chair with Paul Majuri on the political steering group, project steering group. We've got lots of PSGs and SWGs and IHPs and all sorts of things in this process. I'd like to introduce Paul. Many of you know Paul. He has been working with this council on treaty settlements in the Monga Authority. And Paul has taken over as chair of the Stakeholder Working Group. So Paul is here to give you an update on where the process is. So I'll hand over. Thanks, Paul.
Great. Thank you, Penny. Good morning, Mr. Chair and councillors. So as Penny has said, Sea Change is it's a collaborative process that has been running relevant stakeholders in the Hauraki Gulf, and to create, through a collaborative process, a marine spatial plan. And in essence, a marine spatial plan is just that. It's a plan that looks at the Gulf from a spatial perspective and tries to articulate the values and interests in that area and how you could deal with those spatially. So if I use an example where may be some good areas for aquaculture, where are some areas that may be good for marine protection, where are some areas that are really important from a cultural perspective. So that's what a marine spatial plan is. The architecture of the project, as Penny has said, is a project steering group, which Penny co-chairs with Paul Majuri, and that includes representatives from Auckland Council, Waikato Regional Council and Central Government and Mana Whenua. One of the most important aspects of this process is it's driven at a governance level by a co-governance arrangement between Mana Whenua and central and local government. So there's also a project board which deals with administration, and then the actual collaboration primarily happens at the Stakeholder Working Group, which has 14 representatives of stakeholders from communities, from Mana Whenua, from commercial and recreational fishing, from farming, from environmental and conservation groups. So there's a wide range of interests on that group, and I had originally started in the position of chair of the independent review panel for Sea Change. So there's an independent review panel that looks at it and checks on its process. And then late last year there was a pause in the project and a reset, and I transitioned into the chair of the Stakeholder Working Group. So there's a couple of key things that we've been focusing on. One is making sure that the relationships between the Stakeholder Working Group and councils are very strong. There were some issues there, and we have now what we call conduits, key representatives from agencies that come and sit with the Stakeholder Working Group, including Greg Holland from Auckland Council, and that's working really well. We've strengthened our relationships with Mana Whenua. They are very important players in this project, and that's working very well. We have quite direct relationships with ministers at the moment, particularly around marine protection, and I know you're going to be talking about that next, but one key issue for us is how the recreational fishing park proposal interacts with Sea Change, because Sea Change is a collaborative process to look at how to deal with the Hauraki Gulf from a spatial perspective, and the fishing park is a big piece of spatial planning that's dropped at this point in the process. So we're talking to ministers about that. But I think the key points really are that we are very focused on trying to deliver a successful collaborative process that then delivers a. We are looking at topics such as biodiversity, marine protection, recreational fishing, commercial fishing, water quality, community and recreational use infrastructure. So we're trying to bring all of those issues together. And look, there's a PowerPoint up here, which or a slide, which just gives you councillors a broad timeline going back to September 2013. There's been a process of talking to the communities, round tables, which were groups of SWG members and the communities coming together to look at topics like fishing, aquaculture, marine protection, and water quality. And then we're now at in March 2016 heavily into plan writing. So we're meeting monthly for 2 days. We're writing. We have a dedicated writing team which is working very hard and doing drafts of chapters of plans. And we're aiming at around September to get to the end of the plan writing process and then move into sort of plan production. Once the SWG has produced this plan, then the process is it delivers it back to the project steering group, and is for the project steering group to consider and make some decisions on, and ultimately accept or otherwise that plan. So, look, that's really, Mr. Chair, a potted summary of where we're at and what we're doing. What I can say is there's a lot of goodwill and a lot of really successful collaboration going on within this group. It's really, really good to see people from sectors that don't generally talk to each other in a room together, talking to each other and trying to recognise that ultimately for the Gulf to be healthy, vibrant and prosperous, it needs all of those parties at the table working together, trying to deliver an outcome that works for all. So that's really where we're at. Penny, that's all I have to say. Penny, you may have something to add. But
no, that's fine. And when that plan comes back, the various councils will take out of it anything that they need to put into rules and regulations. So, but that won't happen until the plan's been approved.
Yeah, that's a very important point. Is that the ultimate plan is not a statutory plan. It's a non-statutory plan, and ultimately the success of the plan will depend on the uptake of it by councils and central government. And so that means it's incumbent on Sea Change to write a plan that is compelling. So, but it goes back into council processes and central government processes after that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Questions? No? So,
Everyone happy?
That's great. It's a good process.
okay, well, look, I'll move that we received the presentation of Mr. Paul Beverley, Independent Chair, and thank him for attending this morning and giving us an overview of the processes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I was seconded by Councillor Cooper. I'll put that motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. And thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you
very
very
much. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
We've got, there's local board input, but it's Mr. Bill McEntee, the chairman of Papakura Local Board, coming in for an item further on in relation to a stormwater land acquisition, and Mr. Malcolm Bell will be talking in relation to the Hunua project. So they're the two there. We now move to, and they'll come up at the time when those items are called. We know that extraordinary business, there's no extraordinary business. Notice of motion, no notice of motion. So we now move to item 9, which is the approval of the new Marine Protected Areas Act Council submission. Tsitsi Uma and Mr. Greg Holland. So we welcome you, and Tsitsi has been working on this with his colleagues, and I think they've done an excellent job. So maybe if you could just give us your presentation. You've got a short PowerPoint, and then we'll get into questions and discuss the submission. Thank you.
Okay, through there. Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, Tsitsi and the rest of the team have been working across the organisation to really pull together the submission. So I'll pass you across to Tsitsi now, and he'll go through the presentation and ask questions after that. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. The report I'm going to present is the Council draft submission on the consultation document for a new Marine Protected Areas Act. This document was published by the government on the 12th of January. Submissions are due on the 11th of March, and we're seeking the committee's approval for this submission. Following slide, please. Oh, I can do it myself. First two slides is I'm going to explain what's being proposed, and after that I will summarize the key draft submission points. The consultation document proposes a new act that aims at addressing limitations with the current Marine Reserves Act and is also intended to replace the Marine Reserves Act. The proposed new act would apply to the territorial seas, which is from land to 12 nautical miles. It would broaden the scope from marine reserves to marine protected areas by adding 3 additional MPA categories. Altogether, this new document, this consultation document proposes 4 MPA categories, which are marine reserves, species-specific sanctuaries, seabed reserves, and recreational fishing parks. The purpose of the first 3 categories is to preserve and protect aspects of marine biodiversity. And the purpose of the recreational fishing parks is to enhance the enjoyment and value of recreational fishing. Future MPAs would be established through a collaborative or board of inquiry process, and future decision-making processes would not only consider environmental benefits of the proposals, but also would require an assessment of impacts on existing and future uses and values, such as recreational, commercial, and cultural values. The government also proposes, as part of this act, to establish 2 recreational fishing parks, one of them in the Hauraki Gulf, and you see a picture on the right that shows the boundaries of the proposed recreational fishing park in the Hauraki Gulf. Then the key submission points, the draft submission points. Auckland Council acknowledges that there's several limitations with existing Marine Reserves Act, in which includes that marine reserves at this stage can only be established for scientific study, and also the current Marine Reserves Act doesn't provide a systematic approach for identifying marine reserves. So therefore, Auckland Council supports refining the legislative framework to enhance, protect and restore marine biodiversity. We believe there's 2 approaches that you can achieve this refinement. The first one is the current approach, which extends the scope from marine reserves to marine protected areas by proposing 3 additional MPA categories. And another approach would be to carry out a more focused review of existing legislation to achieve an integrated and compatible framework. Staff recommend option 2, a more legislative review, because the proposed new MPA categories creates complexity, confusion and a potential overlap between agencies, duplication of effort and increased coordination cost. It does that because the MPA categories, they don't provide additional protection by themselves. They use existing legislation which creates overlap and duplication. They use only a subset of available tools that can contribute to marine protection. So adding some in and leaving some out creates confusion. But if you would add in more, that would create further complexity and overlap. And the MPA categories also include a purpose which is not central to marine protection, and this is referring to the recreational fishing park, and that confuses fishery management and marine protection purposes. So the recreational fishing parks as an MPA category, as noted, we consider the purpose of these parks, the enhancement of, to enhance the enjoyment and value of recreational fishing, fisheries management responsibility, which is not consistent with the outcome sought for a marine protection framework. There's already tools available or in place under the Fisheries Act to manage recreational and commercial interactions. So therefore we believe that the recreational fishing parks create overlap, complexity and potential increased coordination costs. These